Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to look at module 64, which is the first video about oligopoly. And there's actually two more modules, 65 and 66, that correspond with oligopoly from your textbook. So we'll take a look at these here. There's a couple of questions in the module that I really don't think are that valuable for us. So I'll kind of tell you as we go along which ones I don't think you really need to do. And I'll be honest and say that the first one is not super valuable for the AP exam because it's a little bit more in depth, but I still think it's valuable to think about, like, why would a firm collude versus why would a firm not, in order to try to restrict output. So as you kind of remember, that colluding is actually a big term that refers to any sorts of behaviors that the firms have where they're trying to essentially operate in a way that's favorable to them by working with each other in some way. It may not be in forming a cartel in where they formally agree to restrict output, but it could be through things like tacit collusion, which this module talks a little bit about. This says, explain whether each of the following traits would increase or decrease the likelihood that a firm would collude to restrict output. So in other words, what would make it so that a firm would actually want to cut back its output and therefore maybe benefit from higher prices? And if we say a firm's initial market share is small, well, would they really benefit by restricting output? Probably not. If they have a really small share of the output, no, we would say it would actually decrease the likelihood, because if they decrease their quantity, then little is gained. But we'd say that it's more likely to not collude, because if they increase their quantity of output, we would say that actually if they increase their quantity of output, then it hurts others more. And what we mean by that when we say it hurts the others more when they increase their quantity is that because there's such a small amount of the market, when they increase their quantity, the price is going to fall for the product in the whole market. But because this is such a small part of the market, the individual firm really doesn't get hurt as much as all of the competitors do. And so by them increasing output, it actually hurts all the others more than it hurts them. And so they're more likely to not collude. It decreases the likelihood that they would collude. For the second one, the firm has a cost advantage. This one also decreases the likelihood, because if they were to say decrease their quantity, then the price goes up, and that helps the others more. But if they increase their quantity, we just said to decrease the quantity. If they increase the quantity and the price goes down, then hurts others more. And so from the perspective of the firm, like if they were to restrict their quantity and that would cause the price to go up, that would actually help the firms that are really struggling to make a profit. But if your firm has a cost advantage, then by actually increasing the quantity and pushing the price down, you might still make a profit, but your competitors might actually go out of business because of you doing that. And that hurts them more, so it actually benefits you. So it's less likely for you to collude. And these last two, the firm's customers face costs additionally when they switch from one product to another. It actually increases the likelihood of colluding. Because if you increase your quantity and price goes down, then you'd have to push, we'd say, price really far down a lot, to overcome switching cost. And this is kind of the short version of basically saying that if you actually were to raise your quantity instead of colluding and cause the price to go down, if you were to try to like beat your competitors in a fair way by just pushing down prices, you actually have to push the prices really far down because the customers have such a high cost of switching between one firm to another. But at the same time, if you were to decrease your costs and jack the prices up even higher, well, it's going to actually allow for you to do that more, because the other customers are going to look at that and go, I'm not going to switch. Like the customers that you already have, they're not going to switch because there's such high costs of switching. So from the perspective of the firm, they go, well, it's not so bad actually if we jack up the prices because the customers aren't going to switch away from us. And the alternative world where you don't collude and you increase your quantity and lower the price, in order to lower the price so much to actually get those customers to switch to you, well, you'd have to lower the price a lot, and that's going to hurt you a fair amount. For the last one, the firm and its rivals are currently operating at maximum capacity. Well, that increases the likelihood, because you can't increase your quantity at all. So might as well collude. The idea here is that if you're colluding, actually you could restrict your output, but by not colluding, you're going to increase your output and produce a more of a competitive market quantity. But because you're already bumping up against your maximum, you can't do that. So you might as well collude and benefit from the higher prices. Now, 2 reasons why cartels are not common in the United States. Number 1, they're illegal. We talked about that in class. Number 2, there's an incentive to cheat on cartels. And that's the inherent instability, right? So we're going to put inherent instability of those. And the idea here is that if you think everybody else is going to participate in the cartel, you have an incentive to cheat. So cartels fall apart by themselves would be kind of the thinking there. Explain why firms in oligopolies are interdependent, but firms in perfectly competitive firms or markets are not. Well, in oligopoly, we'd say few in number, so outcomes affect each other. And then we'd say in perfect competition, we'd say there's too many to affect each other. Because each firm is so small, too many and so small, right? Each one has such a small market share, we would actually say that they can't really affect each other because they're so small within that. Let's take it with multiple choice. Number 1, when firms cooperate to raise their joint profits, that's the definition of collusion. It's not a cartel. Common misconception, right? When they're just cooperating, that doesn't necessarily mean they're in a cartel. Cooperating can take a lot of different forms. Take a look at Module 64 to see what those would be. Now, I changed this table, and for some reason the table should be a little bit farther up. I changed this table from the textbook because it's a complicated set of numbers in the textbook, and frankly, they're just too hard to do without actually kind of having a calculator. But these you could do without a calculator. So I have changed this question, and this is how it appears on quizzes. Which of the statements are correct with this table? The 4-firm concentration ratio is 95. 50 plus 20 plus 10 plus 10, that's not 95, so we're ruling that one out. The Herfindahl-Hirschman index is 10,000. Well, that's only if you're a monopoly. And there's no monopoly, so that one's not true. And we would also say, though, that the 4-firm concentration ratio is 90, so this industry is likely not perfectly competitive, so none of the options. And by the way, on the quiz, I'm going to replace this one and put it right there. I think none of the options is actually the correct answer for this one. So just so you know, I have changed this question on the quiz. Number 3, an agreement among several producers to restrict output and increase profit. That is a cartel. Number 4, oligopolists engage in what types of behavior? Quantity competition, price competition, and cooperative behavior. They engage in all 3 of those particular things. And so they will basically compete sometimes, and sometimes they will compete actually, and sometimes they will cooperate. So we'll say E. And then number 5, which of the following makes it easier for them to maintain profit to have a cartel? Well, a ban wouldn't. A small number of firms actually would make it easier. Lack of product differentiation, so this means the identical, right? Low startup costs for new firms. No, that's going to make it easier for new firms to jump in. And the assumption by firms that other firms have variable, I don't know what that was supposed to say, costs, maybe? That one's not right. We could just rule that one out. So easier for them to maintain economic profit would be a small number of firms, fewer people to worry about. If there were product differentiation, it would actually allow them to maintain economic profit easier. If there were really high startup costs for other firms, that would make it easier. And if they were encouraged to make cartels, then that would make it easier. So hopefully this helped you with Module 64. I'll see you next time.